Thank you for coming along to our webinar on making tax digital for Infor SunSystems. We're going to be running through a brief PowerPoint just explaining and positioning making tax digital for SunSystems, and then moving on to a demonstration of the software and the processes involved in logging a digital tax return through the system with HMRC. Making Tax Digital is a solution that's been designed and developed by Professional Advantage. Professional Advantage, for those who have not seen or used our software in the past, we are an organization who've been developing solutions dedicated to Infor SunSystems for many years now, probably over 30 years. We are an Infor development partner, meaning that we can produce additional tools that sit in around the outside of SunSystems to provide additional functionality, different user interfaces, and to provide something to bridge the gaps which you may find within your core SunSystems solution. We cover different areas such as cash management, billing management, payments, spend control, and procurement. We've also been able to produce a number of specialist solutions that are dedicated to very particular needs. And this is the area in which Making Tax Digital sits. This is where MTD comes in as an easy bridging solution for users to submit returns to HMRC. Our HMRC recognized MTD solution will be made to calculate your VAT return easier and fully auditable. It meets HMRC requirements for security and digital submission on returns, while also offering real-time inquiry and visibility of information, and a choice between direct extraction or a spreadsheet. We have a few deployment paths that can be selected for MTD: on-premise, private hosted, or PA cloud. MTD keeps up to date with changes that HMRC introduces. Some of the key features include on-demand inquiry, direct ledger extraction, field rules and calculations, secure HMRC API links, fraud prevention, field rules, digital submission, and manages group or single VRN entities. We also have a few benefits that are included. This is to be compliant as a digital link, choice of direct extraction or Excel add-in, full historical audit trail from Infor SunSystems to HMRC. You can also view historical HMRC liabilities and the payments history. This is some of the feedback that's been left from our clients. And now I will come out of the PowerPoint presentation and do a brief demonstration on MTD. So here I have Microsoft Excel currently open, and you'll notice under the Home tab in Excel, there is a new add-in available called MTD Excel. So I'll go ahead and click on the MTD Excel tab, and you have an option to increase the add-in view by dragging the divider, and there's also an option to just completely drag the add-in outside of the box. Okay, so just to start off with, I'm just going to show you the add-in in this current view. EAS will be the user I will use to log in. You do also have an option as automatic login. At this point, I'm just using named user for myself to be logged in as. We'll jump into the maintenance tab first, just to show you that registration number being created. And for that part, we have HMRC currently giving us an option to create a test that registration number by this option called HMRC testing. So as soon as you click on this option, it will ask you to enter a description for your test VAT registration number. So in our case, I'm just going to call it webinar LTD. And when you go and click fetch and create test VRN, it will give you a test username and a password, as well as a test VAT registration number. And you should also have a browser that will open up with the HMRC page. At the same time, as soon as that happens, it will basically ask you to link MTD to the HMRC VRN number to be able to view the VAT information and change VAT information. use an API. So we'll go ahead and click the continue option and select sign into government gateway ID, as we've been provided the username and password already. This is purely for the test environment. So now we'll need to copy the user ID. So you can select the user ID field, copy and paste it in. And you can also use the copy function that is available on the right side if you wish to. Once you copied and pasted those fields in, click on the sign in option. And this is the moment where HMRC will ask you to provide permission once more. Once you're happy to do that, select give permissions. Now this link to HMRC will be valid for 18 months. After that has expired, you'll need to just renew the connection by signing in once more to provide authorization. We'll go ahead and click on give permission. Now we've given permission to PA MTD, and we've got a code that's listed, an authorization code. Simply click on the copy button, and we'll need to paste it into the authorization code and select save. After this has occurred, you can see a valid message come through to say that the VAT registration number has been created. All right. Once the test VAT registration number has been created, you can navigate to the VAT registration numbers area. Okay, and over here you'll see a number of VAT registration numbers already in use. So we've got a few on there. The one that we've created today is this particular one. Just to run through some of the options here, we've got the VAT registration number, which is the 9-digit number that will need to be used in the maintenance area. We can give a description, so this is purely for internal use only. And you have a few options how you can create the VAT registration number within MTD. You can create a solo VAT registration number, which is not part of a VAT group. And you also have an option to create a group VAT registration number that will then have members that belong part of the group. Okay, so there's a few different options for us available. And you can also just, if you wish to expand the view of the add-in itself, you can just click on the MTD add-in and drag it out just to increase some size of your add-in. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, sorry, you have 18 months available for permissions that's been granted between the MTD solution to HMRC. So that link is valid for that amount of time. You'll notice the authorization expiry column that carries the number of days that it's still valid for until it expires. We have a checkbox for authorized to say that it's currently authorized and we can retrieve data. We can use it in this particular example. And you also have a timestamp that will show exactly when the VAT registration number was last used. Okay. So once the link expires, you can click on the reauthorize button, and this will give permission once more and grant another 18 months worth of access. So we don't need to do anything for the next 549 days. If you no longer wish to use the VAT registration number, that you will wish to revoke permissions, you can click on the clear authorization button, which will simply make it inactive for any further communication. And if you need to reactivate it again, you can just authorize it using this button right here. If you wish to send a quick ping command to HMRC to see if that registration number is still active, simply click on the verify authorization button. It does a quick ping via the API to confirm it's still up and running, the password and everything is still valid for that registration number. And you can go ahead and continue to use the software. So the VAT registration number area has been reviewed. You can then jump into the profiles area. So a bit of background on profiles. The profiles is an area that will allow you to create a particular profile you wish to use for your submission, which will consist of from 1 to 9 boxes that HMRC allow you to do a return for. And in this profile screen, you're allowed to map ledger summaries, which are your SunSystems transactions. You also include fixed amounts via the user entered option, and then you can also include the values from the Excel spreadsheet, which is determined by this add-in column right here. So there's three possible options for us to currently set up a mapping for the particular box, and I'll show you a bit more shortly on how that works. So let's begin with creating a new profile. So this profile, we'll call it Webinar LTD. Exceeded the 10 characters. Yes, I have. We'll just call it webinar for now. And LTD in here. Excuse my typing. What we can do right now is set it to match an existing VAT registration number, so there's a one-to-one match. Otherwise, if we left it blank, it means that other VAT registration numbers could use that profile, but we wish to restrict it to only one. So in that case, we've selected it to the one we created earlier. Now, I like to hit the save button as I go along to ensure all my work is saved, so I'm just going to go ahead and click save. And now the header area is all configured. We just need to work on the two tabs underneath it. So let's start with cell values. We have some cell values that we can create in this grid. So first we'll need to create a new row, and you have an option to select the cells that are available. So typically HMRC allows you from box 1 to box 9 to be selected. There are two boxes which are mathematical. Okay, so box 3 and box 5 you can see are not visible as they are mathematically calculated by Making Tax Digital. So there's less efforts for us involved in mapping or putting any configuration in place. So I'm just going to set up a quick view on how this would typically be set up, and then we can configure the areas that we wish to. So I'm just going to go through the box 1 to 9. Set up the defaults, and then we can work on mapping the relevant fields. Okay. So once we have the box 1 to box 9 set up, we can now specify exactly what kind of mapping will be required for box 1 to box 9. So currently for me, my data is sitting in the PK1 business unit. So I wish to target all my transactions to be mapped from the PK1 business unit. So for me to do that, I need to create a ledger summary, so which is this column that we're focusing on. So I'm just going to hit save as I go along again. So ledger summary, navigate to the ledger summary on the left side here, and this is the data area where we can actually configure data to be picked up. Now, earlier on, I have created a previous ledger called DM1. So if we select DM1, you can have a look at the configuration that I've used. So the business unit that we're going to pick up the transactions from is from the PK1 business unit. We'll be looking at the ledger, actual ledger called A. The base amount will be used as the amount field to pick up the data from. You can also specify if the debit values are positive from SunSystems transactions or the credit values. In this case, I've selected credit. You can also use the reverse charge function, and this is specifically used for box 6 and 7, where you may specify transactions more than once. So when we don't have that field currently selected. And underneath that, you have a few tabs that are running across here. And these tabs allow you to specify the area where exactly you're looking to get the transactions from. So for me, I'm looking to only pick up the account 11,000 in this example. Is purely for product sales. If I wish to include more accounts, I can simply continue to add them into the list here and click OK, which will add them all up together. Okay. So right now we've only got one account specified. There's no further filters on. But the great thing with MTD is you can specify the type of parameters you wish to use on that data. So you can minimize the data or restrict it to only pick up certain journals, perhaps. If you only want your financial journals and other journals to be excluded, you can simply specify, hey, I want my general journals to only be used for this extract. So you'd map the relevant entry in your field from and your field to. Okay. You also have a few other tabs, just as an example. You have account dimensions, transaction dimensions. So for transaction dimensions, maybe we want only a certain department data to come through. So again, we need to specify that information. We can input the to, the from field. If there's more data we need to pick up, we can use the cherry picker to select more than one entry. Maybe we want something from the development department there, and you'd select OK. Right, so there's a few ways how you can go ahead and set this up, and I'll simply just have only the account visible for all the data. I don't want to restrict any other options on this account. Okay, so I've got my DM1 ledger summary already created. So let's go ahead and add that to my profile. So as I've already created the box 1 to box 9 entries, I'm just going to edit the row and now select the ledger summary to be used. So for this one, I'm going to use DM1 and just go ahead and hit save. Let's have a look at the next one down, box 2. So you'd repeat this exercise going through the list just to ensure that all the data you wish to be used for the return is included. And you can add multiple entries. So you can include ledger summary as well as the fixed value from the user entered, or even include the data coming from the spreadsheet that you wish to use by enabling this button. So there's a few ways how you can go about it adding this. You can also create another row for another box 1, for example, and then have another mapping for it. So there's unlimited entries that you can put in this particular box. You can have 5 box 1s if you wish to, and MTD will then add all that up and give you a grand total for all of those box 1s, and that will be the grand total for box 1. Okay, let's go ahead and select a value for box 2. So for box 2, I think I have a DM2 available there. Yep, there we go. Something I created earlier. There is box 4. So let's go ahead and edit that one. Map box 4 against it and hit save. And I'll just show you what I created earlier. So this is the DM1 is pointing at an account to pick up transactions from, which is 11,000. We have another ledger summary called DM2, which is picking up data from 12,000. And DM4 is picking up data from 13,000. Okay. So just jumping back into our profiles, we've got some of our boxes already defined. And earlier ahead of time, I've created some user entered fields. So this is fixed values that you can use to pick up data for. So right here, I've just put some test data for 2017 because HMRC give us a test environment to play around with based on that date. So that's why I've got 2017 set up over here. Just jumping back into the profiles, what I can go ahead and do is maybe select for box 6 my user entered, and sorry, that was a box 8 user entered. There we go, DM user entered box 8. So I've got some fixed values that will come through for box 8 only. For box 6 and box 7, I've got some actual calculations I'll be working on. So what I can do is add some data from my spreadsheet. So to do that, I'll need to specify that I'll use the add-in from the Excel workbook to bring out the data for. So these cells will be available for me to map to during these box selections Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And maybe I want another one for box 1. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the add-in button for that. Okay, so now I've created my profile now that has the mappings set up. There's one more thing I need to do is create a start position for my profile. So let's go ahead and click on this tab, select the new row option. We need to select the business unit that we wish to use for this starting position. Identify a ledger. A is my actuals ledger. Then you can specify a start journal number if you know the journal number, and that's the way you wish to make your submissions as. For me, I'm going to use the periods 5/2005. I didn't type too well. 5/2005. That's better. And because I'm using some old data in SunSystems for the PK1 business unit and the test bed that HMRC allows us to play around with, the data are going to be not the most recent ones, so that's the reason for it. If you're looking to use anything other than period, you can also use the start date position, which will allow you to specify the date. But I'm going to go ahead with the start period on this one. So that's been set up in this row, and I'm just going to go ahead and click save. So I've got my profile set up. I'm at the point where I wish to use the profile inquiry tab to output some data for my profile. So if we navigate to the profile inquiry tab, select the profile we've been working on, webinar LTD. This will actually run a simulation on the profile and give me some values based on the transactions I've mapped. So this can be used internally as many times as you wish before the submission, just to give the user an idea of what numbers are coming from the system based on the mapping. So I'm going to go ahead and select the VRN field option and the period. So in my case, it's 5/2005. And maybe I only want it for a month since it's a monthly return. 06/2005. Now, the obligation dates are in 2017 in this environment, so I'm going to just type it in here, 2017, and I'll get some numbers out shortly. Actually, let me just make that 0105 to 2017 and 31st 05 2017. There we go. Now, once all the required fields are populated, you can click on the calculate values. Now, for obligation date, you'll only need to enter this if you have user entered defined in your profile. So let's go ahead and select the calculate values. And we've got some data that's been returned now. So you can see from box 1 to box 9, these are our boxes that we need to submit the return for. And on the right side, we've got the name of the profile as well as the value that's been calculated for our box 1. Okay, so if we do wish to do some further analysis on the data, we can click on the hyperlink on the amount, and this will allow us to drill down into the box itself and tell us what that box consists of. So you can see box 1 currently points at the ledger summary, and it's telling us that DM1 is being used in this case. PK1 business unit, the A ledger, and the total amount of all the transactions that are there. In total, there's 1,494 transactions. The first journal number that was used, 237, and the last journal number, 489. If you wish to go a bit further, you can go ahead and drill down even further by clicking on the amount again. And once you've clicked on that, you'll notice all of the data coming through. So if it does take slightly longer to populate, just bear in mind there's a lot of data coming through. So we've got 75 pages worth of data in this case. All right. And we can examine it through here. jump through the pages if you wish to analyze all of that. So this is all of our ledger data coming from the 11,000 accounts. You can see the journal details, some reference details, the amount. So there's quite a bit of information to work on. Okay. If you wish to group the data maybe by certain analysis codes, journal types, you do have an option to group things by dragging the column into the grouping area. So I'm just going to click on the journal type and drag it up and drop it. So now it's grouped my data by the journals that were unique. So in this case, there's a FGJ journal and the SIMC journal. And if I just expand the FGJ journal, and I can scroll to the right side and see what other bits of information were used, such as analysis codes, my department, my project, employee code, the tax that was used, tax code that was there. So there's quite a lot of information that's coming through here. So a lot that can be analyzed. If you are using the web version, you do have an option to export it to review the data via HTML, for example. But I would recommend to review the data here, make sure that you're happy with it, and once you are, you can continue on to the next point to submit. So let's just go ahead and just remove that grouping back. So I'm just going to drag that back, maybe drop it right here, and that's reset the view for me. Okay. So you can still go ahead and scroll to the right, have a look at all the data, see that if you're happy with it. And you can come out of the drill downs once you're happy. So we've got this data coming through for the DM2 as well. There's 285 transactions. So quite easy to analyze the data through this Excel add-in. We've got some fields, and you can see, sorry, box 3 has calculated the data automatically based on this calculation required by HMRC. So this bit of information is automatically set up for us. Now we've got some add-in data to be brought in from the spreadsheet, which we've specified earlier in the profiles. So if you remember the webinar profile that we used, we had box 1 as well as 6, 7, and 9 set up to include some data from the add-in. So what can we do now? We can actually just bring the screen slightly to the right here. And for example, for box 1, I'm just going to put a value of 100 in here. Say for box 6, we'll put 600. 7,000 will have 77,777, and box 9 will have a few lines in there. Okay, so I've got some data that I wish to now use from the spreadsheet to be included as part of my submission. Now to do that, you'll need to click on the first tab here called Excel add-in. So once you've clicked on that, you can select your VAT registration number. But first I need to retrieve some obligations. So before I go and do that, I'm going to click on the MTD tab. And the MTD tab will show you your VAT registration number that you've previously created, that you've maintained. And underneath it, there are a few options that are visible for us to review. Now the first one is obligations. In the obligation screen, you can review the obligations required to be either submitted or have already been fulfilled. So in this screen right here, you can see once I've clicked on obligations and click on retrieve from HMRC, we've got some data that's come through from the system. So we have 2 previously submitted fulfilled obligations that are showing up in the 2 top rows. And the last row currently shows an open obligation. So once the obligation has been fulfilled, the status of the open obligation will be changed to fulfilled, and the data will also be visible in the screen below to show you what information has been submitted. And you can also view the report that will generate the data based on what has been submitted. All right, I'll come back to this in a moment and show you a bit more information. So let's just jump back into our Excel add-in tab, select the VAT registration number we wish to use. Webinar LTD is the one we wish to use in this case. And we also had a profile we've been working on called Webinar LTD. So Webinar LTD has restricted certain options to be used as an add-in. So you can see some of these are grayed out. Box 1 is not. Box 6, 7, and 9 is not. So let's just go ahead and map these particular entries to the boxes. So if I wish to use the value from cell A1, I can click on A1 cell, go to my box 1, and click on Assign Excel Cell to Box, which will then populate the value into this particular screen. Okay, so it's a simple exercise we'll just need to repeat in the other areas. So again, click on the relevant cell that has the value you wish to use and select the box that you wish to assign the Excel cell box to. So you can see 6,000 has been brought across. You can also use the second box, which will allow you to first click on the value to say which box you wish to use, and then click on the cell you wish to have the numbers be allocated for. So you can either use the first or the second box, it doesn't really matter, whichever one is your preference. So let's assign the last box to this particular value, and now I've got all my data that's been mapped out. So 100 consists of this particular cell value A1, and if you wish to view the data in a slightly better fashion, there is a function here called highlights that will highlight the values based on what has been selected, just so it's easy to see the information. If you wish to remove the selected entries, just simply remove it, and you can select it once more just to add that back in. So once you've used your data from the Excel spreadsheet, you can save that back into MTD. So now I'm going to click on the Save button. Now the data is saved against my obligation as this particular starting date of 2017, the end date and the due date. So let's just go back into the MTD tab, click on Obligations, and select the open obligation that I previously used. If I click on Calculate Values based on the profile that I previously set up, the calculated values should now populate, which brings out the data from the spreadsheet in box 9, box 7, box 6, as you can see that's come through. And all the values are still available to be shown on the drill down. The ledger summary is bringing out all of these transactions based on the period that is for, and it's also including the add-in value that I've previously mapped in. Okay, so once MTD has noticed these two values, it will add them up and give you a grand total for the box 1. Okay, so you can just go through the list, ensure that you're happy with these particular options, check the drill downs, make sure that they are happy. The data that's coming through is valid. Box 6 tells you it's picking up the data from the workbook. So once you've got all your data ready, you're in a position where you can submit this to HMRC. So you can go ahead and click on the Submit to HMRC button. You'll get a prompt to tell you if you're happy to submit this. It has to be true and complete. And just click on the Submit button to fulfill that obligation. You'll notice the submission has been processed now. You have your receipt reference, your form bundle, the charge reference number showing up on the screen here. All the data is still retained, MTD remembers all the data that you've used. The status has changed from open to fulfilled here against our test VAT registration number. We can see the net VAT amount. Is it to pay or to reclaim? It's to pay. When the submission was received to HMRC, so that's got to today's timestamp. Which particular user also made the submission. Okay, so it captures quite a bit of information on this screen. You can also use this print preview button, and this will generate you a report. And the report can be, it will show you the summary of everything that's included. So the VAT registration number, the profile name that was used, along with all the reference details, when the submission was received, the values for the boxes that have been added up, and the ledger data coming through on this particular screen here. So you can print this report, you can save this as a PDF, as any other format that is shown on the list. So feel free to go in here and save it, print it, save a digital copy somewhere on the machine. But also make sure that you save the spreadsheet that you've used the details for, just so you have that for reference. And once the obligation has been fulfilled, and you're awaiting to have the next open obligation to be showing, you can simply click on the Retrieve from HMRC button, and a new one will pop up once it's ready. Okay, so it's a pretty simple process, I would consider, in making this submission. The next option I wanted to show you is the payments area. So in the payments area, you have some data that can be output from the test HMRC website. It will show you the amount that has been received by HMRC at a particular date. So we've got some dates here, as well as how much has been received by HMRC. So that's visible there. You can specify the date ranges at the top here, just so you can get the data based on whatever you've looking to query. Just again, bear in mind, 2017, this is a bit of test environment data from HMRC, so it's not too consistent with what we wish to output. But it's a good indication of how the software will work when you go to use the real information. Liabilities. So what kind of liabilities are outstanding? So we've got some return debit charge values, original amounts, outstanding charge, when is it due? So just a bit of information here. So on this screen, there's nothing that you can change or submit. This is purely for reference, as well as the payments, purely for reference. And the obligations is the only screen where you can actually make the submission. Okay, so that was the quick overview of MTD submission via the Excel add-in. You also have the web access to MTD, which I'd like to also demonstrate. So you do have a URL that you can use and input into your browser. Once you've input that in, you can then log in as the same user you've previously used. So I'm going to go ahead and use the PAS user. You'll notice the webinar LTD registration number is showing. And if I click on my obligations, I'll be able to see my fulfilled obligation in this screen. So these are all of my previously used values that I can still drill down into. And this will show you how much was specified for this box. Again, I can print preview if I wish to. But you'll notice the only thing this browser doesn't have is ability to have the Excel add-in, because it's an add-in that is used within Excel. So this is purely all the other options that you previously saw, but this is only accessible via the web. The other thing I also wish to show you is the HMRC testing log. So this is a very useful area to show you any communications that have taken place between MTD and HMRC. And the most recent entries are at the top, you can see. You can also see the submission communications that have been processed using the test about registration number, and just some detailed information as to what was processed during that moment. So quite a lot is going on behind the scenes, but in the user interface, we can see what we have here on the screen. So thank you all for coming along to look at this webinar demonstration. I hope you found it useful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out using the links in our PowerPoint presentation. Thank you and goodbye.